Vanessa Claude finds a distraction from her uneventful life with a sexy younger guy.
Aldrich was there with her to try to comfort her and guide her a little bit, so I think she just needed that sense of self-security.
But when he enlists her help in an illicit scheme, she finds herself in the middle of a murderous night she'll never forget.
The plan was to go to Randy's home and to make it look like a robbery gone wrong.
Absolutely, she was going to protect him.
I ain't the one that pulled the trigger, man.
And later, in Calumet, Illinois, Mary Ann Arnold finds true love right after high school.
They became new parents, they started living together, they grew up fast.
But when her relationship becomes one-sided,
What's this I hear about you and Lois?
she'll move hell on earth to keep another woman at bay.
Lois starts pleading for her life, and at some point she breaks away.
It was savage and shocking the way things went down.
There are hundreds of thousands of women in prison at any given time in the U.S. These are the true stories of women who committed heinous crimes in the name of love. For my man. Even though 25-year-old Vanessa Claude is old enough to be on her own, she chooses to live with her mom in her quaint hometown of Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
She was kind of trying to figure out her way in life, trying to figure out where she wanted to go.
Not everyone knows what they want to be when they grow up. It's really about trial and error. But if they're completely lost, then they can become at risk to a stronger personality.
But for the time being, Vanessa makes sure she doesn't miss out on love when she starts dating 21-year-old Aldrich Lillard.
She was young, and, he came along, he's tough-looking and built, hey, baby, how you doing? So I feel like she just got caught up in his charisma and his looks and his charm.
Aldrich also did time for a host of minor offenses.
It seemed like he kind of maybe lived on the edge a little bit, and I'm sure that was exciting to her too.
When a young person is trying to find their place in the world, they can really be influenced strongly by the person they look up to.
Fresh off his latest stint at the county jail for burglary, he moves in with Vanessa at her mom's, where the open-door policy is especially sweet.
Aldrich had the company of a young lady, and he also didn't have to get a job. He had a free place to stay. He was hanging out, go out when you want to, do whatever you want to do.
With plenty of free time to spend together, neither of them seem compelled to change their situation anytime soon.
When two people get together unemployed, they now have a lack of direction 2 times over, and therefore they continue to be unemployed, and they don't know where they're going.
They had a house that was being paid for by somebody else, so they didn't have bills. They had somebody to feed them and take care of them and keep a roof over their head.
But after a month of playing house, Aldrich tells his girl he's got an idea on how to get them some cash.
Look, sweetheart, got a plan for us to get a lot of money.
The plan involves his buddy from prison, Darren Yeager.
Darren and Aldrich met in custody, met while they were in jail on unrelated charges to each other.
Before Aldrich's release, the two had multiple conversations about the man who Darren says landed him in the joint.
Because of a snitch named Randy.
A few months earlier, 49-year-old Randy Betts had let Darren crash at his place. But things turned ugly when Darren stole a knife from Randy's weapons collection and used it in a drug deal.
He's a real collector. He's got all kinds of knives and guns and every single thing you could think of.
And somebody was killed. Darren was a suspect on that. Randy figured out real quick what had happened, and as a result, he notified law enforcement.
They had him as a witness.
Randy not only gives Darren up to the police, but he's set to testify against the seething inmate in his upcoming trial, giving prosecutors a clear shot at convicting Darren.
One favor, he snitched on me, make sure he dies.
And the fewer people you have to testify against you, the better your chances of getting off.
Now, Vanessa is all ears as her boyfriend lets her in on how he plans to help his friend get out of jail and make it worth their while.
So Darren was
So Darren also let him know about the valuable guns that Randy had at home. The plan was to go to Randy's home and to rob him and to make it look like a robbery gone wrong and to kill him in the process.
With Randy gone, Darren will walk, and we can keep everything we get in the house.
It's a big job, and Aldrich tells his girl he wants her by his side as he executes the heist.
I'm sure Aldrich told her how much he needed her, and we need you to do this, need you to do that. And I would imagine he trusted her, and I would imagine there's a part of her that felt like that'd be something exciting to experience.
I can do this. I'm good.
Great.
Vanessa's response was to go along with it. They'd been spending an awful lot of time together, and she was just along for the ride.
When a person takes control, they become a leader in the situation. The person who follows them normally doesn't know any better, and they maybe engage in behaviors that are unhealthy or illegal.
To get the job done smoothly, Aldrich also enlists some extra muscle in the form of 27-year-old Ron Allen Hardy.
Ron Allen Hardy was an associate of Aldrich Lillard's. They were friends. They'd had a history already.
Before the trio embarks on the cold-blooded scheme, they need to figure out which hour of the day is best to catch their target by surprise. From what they know about Randy, he works a full-time job, keeps a routine schedule, and lives alone.
Randy was a family guy. He had 2 young adult children. He was divorced, and he normally kept to himself.
Chances are he'll be by himself late at night, making this the window of his doom. But they're not going to the home of a gun enthusiast unarmed. Equipped with a stolen gun, they set their deadly plan in motion. 5 days before Christmas, Vanessa drives Aldrich and Ron Allen to Randy's house.
I think she was excited because she was finally able to prove her love to Aldrich in a very tangible way, but she was probably also afraid and fearful for what was about to happen.
If someone is in love, chances are they may follow that other person blindly, even if they end up in a really bad situation.
With 12 miles behind them, they arrive at their destination, a quiet neighborhood in the small Tennessee town of Smyrna.
Aldrich and Ron Allen got out of the car while Vanessa stayed inside the car.
The 2 walk past numerous holiday illuminations until they reach Randy's front door. Inside, Randy is awakened.
Randy Betts was not somebody that was a timid man. He wouldn't have been scared to answer the door if it was a complete stranger.
Vanessa watches from the car as Randy comes face to face with the man sent to kill him.
She never should have agreed to go with Ron Allen at all.
When Randy opened the door, Aldrich immediately fired a shot.
It's 5 days before Christmas when Vanessa Claude waits in the getaway car as her boyfriend takes action against the man he's set to kill.
After Randy opened the door, immediately a shot went off.
Randy manages to dodge the projectile, sending the bullet through the couch. But a moment later, the partners in crime take another shot at point-blank range.
Second round caught him in the neck. He fell immediately right there in the doorway.
As Randy bleeds to death, not a soul around realizes the horror going on in the neighborhood.
No one heard a thing, and so no one called 911.
And we're talking about a 9mm. We're not talking about multiple shotgun blasts that's going to wind up waking the neighborhood. Somebody can dismiss it as kids with fireworks. Somebody can dismiss it as car backfiring.
For the killers, the night is far from over. Vanessa pulls up close to the house as her man and Ron Allen put the second phase of their plan in action and go after what they came for.
They went through all the drawers, dumped stuff out. Everything had been rifled through. The majority of the guns were stolen.
Tensions run high as they carry several loads of loot over Randy's body and into the waiting vehicle.
The house was in complete disarray. It was utterly ransacked, and they made away with guns and credit cards.
Adrenaline is always the driver in really bad situations, situations where someone may feel in danger, and situations that may be absolutely shocking. Cognition goes out the window. It's all about impulse.
Vanessa takes her place in the driver's seat as they flee the area, with no one on their tail.
Right after the murder, they went back to Vanessa's house and they unloaded the guns into the house.
Then, Ron Allen gets his share of the guns to sell before taking off. 12 hours later, the couple wakes up with more money at their disposal than they're used to.
So this led them on a mini shopping spree. They gassed up the car with the cards, and then they headed to the mall.
Meanwhile, Randy's body still lies untouched.
When you have a loss of life, I mean, that's just the most glaring thing. A man lost his life because he had valuable property and he assisted law enforcement.
These three individuals took away a father. I know Christmas will never ever be the same for them ever again. I know the holidays will be a tough time. These individuals have made life horrible for a lot of people.
The following day, his 19-year-old daughter shows up at the front door with a gift for her dad.
She had trouble opening the door because she didn't realize his body was laying right behind the door.
Finally, she's able to wedge the door open just enough to enter into the most horrific moment of her life. Her father laying lifeless, eyes wide open, in a pool of drying blood.
She was in such a hysteria, she dropped her keys on the sidewalk when she found her father dead.
In a panic, she runs next door for help. Minutes later, first responders are followed by crime scene investigators.
We realized as soon as we went in the door, no forced entry, we were able to start formulating what our theory was and what kind of situation we had.
First thing they see, obviously, is the location of where Randy was found, indicating he was shot right at the door, which was really one of the big keys to them to let them know that, we're dealing with a true homicide.
As the homicide investigation ignites, 13 miles away in Antioch, Vanessa and Aldrich are already reaping the benefits of the stolen credit cards. But every swipe of the blood money is leaving breadcrumbs behind for authorities.
They purchased gas, and then they went to a mall, and they began purchasing items. A clerk there noticed the fact that this was a young woman who's using a man's credit card. He questioned her about it.
Is this your card?
Oh, no, it's my dad's card.
Okay.
And the clerk decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and make sure to get some ID from you, and he did. She showed the ID, and he penciled that in on the paperwork.
And so they paid for their merchandise as quickly as possible, and they got out of there.
When someone puts their name on the line, it means that they have complete tunnel vision trying to make someone else happy. Their needs now become irrelevant, and it's all about that other person.
Later that same day, an unexpected source gets a hot lead on Randy's killers.
The son got information from the bank that the credit card purchase had been made and immediately called the detective. And then he alerted me, and we got into action to go up there to determine who made the purchase. He was able to describe Aldrich as a short black man and described her. I was actually able to give us a description of the clothes that she was wearing.
Because the clerk had been so savvy and requested Vanessa's driver's license number, he also wrote down her address, which led detectives right to her mother's house.
This was a turning point in the case because they knew that Vanessa was involved in some way because she had Randy's credit card.
Less than 48 hours after the murder, the sheriff's department assembles a team to hightail it to the Claude residence to interview the unauthorized user of the victim's credit card. Inside, Vanessa, her mother, and Aldrich go about their day when they're confronted with the unexpected visitors.
Who is it?
When the police knocked on the door, the first thing they heard was a male voice.
When police announce their presence, Vanessa answers the door, while Aldrich runs to hide.
She stood there and she dealt with the police.
But she denies knowing anything about a man's voice.
Yes, ma'am. Whose male voice did we hear?
I need you to tell us the truth. Where
We know there's a male in the house. There's no question. They're obviously hiding him, so we need to get in the house to make sure he's not loading up and ready to take us out.
But Vanessa's devious efforts to keep police from finding Aldrich are quickly shot down by the woman of the house.
They eventually were able to gain entry because it was her mother's residence, and she allowed the police to do a search.
And the hunt for their male person of interest doesn't last long. And later, Mary Ann Arnold is possessed by a jealous rage after hearing the father of her kids has his sights on another woman.
Are you messing with Al?
They planned on kidnapping Lois and just scare her.
Mary Ann would go to any lengths to keep her relationship together with Al.
Shocking evidence revealed that the gun used to shoot and kill Randy Betts was registered to a police officer.
It was stolen out of the home of a detective in Nashville. Ron Allen Hardy and Aldrich Lillard were the ones by themselves that did the burglary.
After being tracked down for using a dead man's bank card, Vanessa Claude tries to shield her man from inquiring police officers.
There's no one else here.
Until her mother allows them to search the house.
Come in.
So the police went inside and they began to search around. They eventually opened the bathroom door and Aldrich was hiding in the shower.
Freeze!
Aldrich is arrested without incident, and his woman follows right behind him as they're both taken into custody. But investigators' business inside the house isn't over.
In addition to the majority of the guns from the robbery of Randy Betts' house, we also located a check that belonged to Randy and the jacket that was purchased.
At the sheriff's office, Vanessa is placed under the hot lights alone. But she's not about to betray her man.
Her first instinct was to get a lawyer.
When someone has been loyal to someone for such a long time, it's not that easy for them to just turn on a dime or give up that person to the authorities.
Contrary to Vanessa's silence, in the next room, Aldrich is game to talk for hours. But after changing his version of the truth several times, he settles on his side of the story.
Aldrich admitted that he was there at the house, in the doorway, but that he'd kill him.
I ain't the one that pulled the trigger, man. Okay.
He insists there was another mysterious person present, named L, who made the deadly move, never giving up his friend, Ron Allen.
Then they went in the back or something. Then when they came back, he had the gun to his head. You know what I'm saying, in the back of his head. And all I know is shots was fired.
But 2 weeks later, Ron Allen's luck comes full circle.
They found Ron Allen's brother who was driving a vehicle and he was pulled over and there were guns in the car. And the guns he said he'd gotten from his brother.
Unknown to him, one of the guns turns out to be the murder weapon. Police track down Ron Allen and arrest him. Both he and Aldrich are charged with theft, aggravated robbery, burglary, and first-degree murder. 2 years after her arrest, Vanessa pleads guilty of facilitation to first-degree murder and agrees to testify against her guy. But she still can't seem to cut the cord completely on her loyalty to Aldrich and maintains he wasn't the one who fired the gun.
As part of her plea, she had to give us a statement, and she, the entire time, tried to minimize Aldrich's position. He stayed in the car. He didn't get out.
Okay.
Up until the end, she protected him as long as she possibly could, and thereafter.
Nothing to do with this.
Aldrich Lillard has his day in court and is convicted of first-degree murder, aggravated robbery, aggravated burglary, and conspiracy to commit robbery and burglary. Ron Allen Hardy is convicted on the exact charges as his partner in crime. Both men are given life sentences without the possibility of parole. Vanessa Claude is sentenced to 20 years, with the possibility of parole after 6 years. As she embarks on her journey behind bars, there's plenty of past choices to reckon with while she comes to terms with how love landed her in the middle of 4 concrete walls.
Going to jail is certainly one of the toughest lessons one can learn about themselves.
This incident speaks volumes about Vanessa because she went through a lot to try to protect Aldrich. Unfortunately, she was putting all this energy toward the wrong kind of man.
Vanessa could have really stepped outside of herself and realized that even though what she wanted was love, it shouldn't have come at the expense of a lost life.
Vanessa Claude's willingness to trespass into her boyfriend's illicit world costs an innocent person their life. Next, in the outskirts of Chicago, Marianne Arnold's determination to keep the father of her children all to herself stirs up a deadly tide of emotion. Not long after finishing high school in Dalton, Illinois, Marianne Arnold meets her destiny when she crosses paths with 21-year-old Albert Covington.
Mary and Albert lived right around the corner from each other, even though they went to different nearby high schools.
Good, how are you?
Albert, nice to meet you.
Albert was attractive, he was clean cut, someone Marianne was very interested in meeting.
Pleasure meeting you.
Their strong mutual attraction keeps both of them coming back for more.
They became exclusive and really were only spending their time with each other.
Though they each still live with their parents, their relationship fast-tracks over the next year when the 19-year-old gets some surprising news.
Are you serious?
Then at that point, her relationship with Al really gets serious, and, you know, it changes from just the two of them into another life to take care of.
When a child is involved, it certainly will make that relationship much tighter. It does amplify the emotions in that relationship, for better or for worse.
Marianne's parents show their support by financially securing an apartment just a few miles away in Phoenix once the baby is born. Despite the lack of sleep that comes with newborns, it doesn't seem to kill the mood for the young lovers.
Well, after the first child, Marianne and Al's family grew quickly. There were 2 more children who came along.
And with more mouths to feed, the couple finds less and less time for love.
What is this?
The dynamics of their relationship changed.
What is what? Why does my house look a mess?
A lot of the stresses of life, being a parent, weighed heavily on them.
Marianne gets a job and becomes the breadwinner.
Pick everything up.
It's no longer just about them and having fun. It's really about making money and taking care of the children. It's a lot of pressure.
But try as they might, 5 years in, Marianne's love isn't enough to keep Al by her side.
As the relationship went downhill, Al decided to take a break from the relationship and move out of the home and move in with his parents again.
What are you doing? Al!
When two people fall in love, especially at a very young age, as time goes by, certainly we see that they may begin to outgrow one another. They went into that relationship when they were kids, and now they are growing into adulthood.
Alone with the kids, the now 23-year-old doesn't take the separation well and looks forward to the potential of them eventually working through their issues.
She didn't see Al moving out as the end of their relationship.
She still cared for him, still believed they were dating, still believed they were together, had feelings for him.
When a relationship has a breakup or a separation, the person who didn't want the relationship to be over in the first place is really upset. But they become even more upset when there still does appear to be hope.
But unfortunately for Marianne, distance doesn't seem to make Al's heart grow fonder. A few months after living separate lives, the single mom gets wind of something through the grapevine that puts her over the edge. Al is dating Lois Thomas.
What are you sure?
Marianne heard through mutual family and friends that Al was moving on.
It's possible if Al starts dating someone else that she may never get him back.
The 20-year-old is an acquaintance of Marianne's who works at the local daycare center, making the alleged affair especially hard to swallow.
Marianne saw Lois as a threat. Lois was a very beautiful young lady. She had a job, she was going to college, she had everything going for her.
Except getting on Mary Ann's bad side. The thought of losing Al for good cues the 23-year-old to mark her territory.
Mary Ann wanted to scare Lois so that she wouldn't want to have anything to do with Al anymore.
Mary Ann will not rest until she knows that he is only with her.
Is rising in Phoenix, Illinois, after single mom Mary Ann Arnold gets wind that the father of her children is dating 20-year-old Lois Thomas.
Mary Ann confronts Al about his relationship with Lois, and Al tells her they're just friends.
What's this I hear about you and Lois?
Nothing, we just hung out.
Did you think I was...
But Mary Ann is not buying it. She's very jealous of Lois.
I want to know the truth.
She wanted to really look into the fact that Al was indeed with somebody else. She wanted to find out for herself what was going on.
Uncertain if her beloved Al is being honest, she dives deeper for the truth.
Are you messing with Al?
Mary Ann also confronts Lois about the relationship between her and Al. Lois also denies that relationship and said that they were just simply friends.
When a person is being lied to, especially if they feel that their significant other is cheating, well, not only do they become insulted, but more than anything else, they become rageful because they feel that they're being treated as a stupid person.
Mary Ann lets it lie for now, until her suspicions are as good as confirmed when a reliable source sheds some light on the lovers in question.
Well, I saw them holding hands.
A cousin of Mary Ann told her that Al had been seen at the movie theaters with Lois, and that set her off. She was pretty upset about that.
Jealousy, that green-eyed monster, can put people in a really dark place, but more than anything else, cause them to lose rational thought.
Mary Ann takes matters into her own hands and decides she'll confront Lois again, just to scare her into never seeing Al again. But she'll need reliable backup, and there's no better reinforcement than her close friend, 18-year-old Evelyn Jackson.
Evelyn kind of has a reputation as being tough, and she deals drugs, she owns a gun.
What's up? So what we gonna do? We gotta teach her a lesson. We gonna see her, we gonna rough her up.
She knew how to handle a situation if there was a problem. She was the person to go to.
Evelyn is game to scare Al's other woman if they can manage to run into her alone. A few days later, bright and early on a Monday morning, Mary Ann rises with the sun and heads to Evelyn's house.
Evelyn was not expecting company that morning. However, Mary Ann came in the house and said this is the perfect time to put our plan into action.
Get your gun, we gotta go. Let's go.
And they planned on kidnapping Lois and just drive around in their vehicle and just scare her into staying away from Al.
Armed with a handgun, the pair sets their scheme to keep Lois away from Al in motion. And because there's power in numbers, they pick up another friend along the way, 16-year-old Catherine Amos. After driving 7 miles to Calumet City, they pull up outside of Lois's house, where they wait. 20 minutes later, at 7 o'clock, their target appears.
So when Lois comes out to get in her car and leave to go to work, the 3 girls are there and they pounce.
Get out! Get out of the car!
They approach her at gunpoint, take her out of her vehicle, and bring her into the other vehicle.
Mary Ann takes off, while Lois is sandwiched between Catherine and Evelyn in the back seat.
The 3 of them start fighting while Mary Ann is driving the car, accusing Lois of taking Al away from her.
Lois grabs for the gun that Evelyn has, and that's when the gun accidentally goes off and shoots the driver's side window.
What the hell?
Mary Ann freaks out and she pulls over and decides that she's going to get in the back and take control.
While Evelyn drives, things get even messier in the back seat.
Mary Ann takes the weapon and strikes her in the head, causing her to bleed. At that point, Mary Ann decides that she needs to get to a secluded area where they can try and scare Lois even more.
Soon, the group arrives alongside a lonely section of the Calumet River.
So the girls pull up in the back of the docks and they force Lois to get out and start walking down along the river.
Mary Ann had a wooden cane with her that she brought out of the car.
Evelyn and Catherine stand nearby listening while Mary Ann and Lois continue their verbal fight over Al. Mary Ann orders her captive to get into the knee-deep water, but she resists. Lois tries to escape, but doesn't get far. That's when Mary Ann expels her rage in full force.
Mary Ann was ruthlessly beating Lois with a cane. Evelyn and Catherine were standing nearby, basically frozen, unsure of what to do at this time.
Lois starts pleading for her life, and at some point she breaks away. She starts running. She knows that she has to get away from there, or she may die.
But Mary Ann is determined to have the last word for the sake of the man she's not willing to let go.
She grabs a bag that has a knife, Christmas lights, a telephone cord, and a hammer.
Mary Ann just goes wild.
It was savage and shocking the way things went down.
Alongside the Little Calumet River in Illinois, Mary Ann Arnold chases the other woman in her man's life to teach her a lesson. While Catherine stays with the car, Mary Ann and Evelyn quickly catch up to Lois and open their bag of tricks.
Hold her down.
Mary Ann gives the Christmas lights to Evelyn and tells Evelyn to make a knot, which Evelyn does. At this point, Mary Ann just goes wild.
She takes the Christmas lights, ties it around Lois's neck, and starts to choke her.
Lois at this time is overpowered. She's scared. She's struggling. She is in fear for her life.
Then the plot takes a savage turn when Mary Ann pulls out the hammer.
At the very same time that Mary Ann is choking Lois, she's using the hammer to strike her about her head and her legs repeatedly.
Bloody and weak, Lois loses any fighting chance at surviving Mary Ann's wrath.
Mary Ann takes a large boulder and smashes her head with it.
We gotta move her.
The two women then dump the unconscious woman in the river to die. Then, the predators meet up with Catherine back in the car, as Lois's life sinks to its end.
It's a terrible tragedy that such a young life was lost. Lois was a great young lady and just an absolute travesty.
Nearly 3 hours later, Mary Ann and her crew keep their secret underwater.
At this point, Mary Ann was just really going on with her day-to-day lively routines, acting like nothing ever happened.
Meanwhile, Lois's co-workers are growing very concerned.
So that morning, Lois's daycare center was going on a field trip. At 9:45, her coworkers noticed Lois still hadn't arrived. And this is not like Lois at all. And her coworkers know that something is wrong, and so they call her house.
Her mother is shocked to find out her daughter isn't at work. Then she enters into a moment that will haunt her forever.
Her mom immediately went outside to look for Lois's car, which is when she found Lois not there and the car still running. And at that point, her mother contacted the police.
The unusual circumstance leads law enforcement to act quickly.
Came in as a missing persons case. We responded out to the scene and spoke to the family and got their initial statements from what they could tell us.
My daughter's car is still running, and I don't know where she is.
Is there anybody you can think of that would have a problem?
It's no secret in the Thomas household that Lois is at odds with one particular individual.
We learned Mary Ann and Lois were arguing because of Al.
That same day, police are able to locate the man at the center of it all.
What seems to be the problem, officers?
We spoke with Al, and he basically told us that him and Lois were just friends, but we believe that there was more of a relationship taking place there.
What can I do to help?
Surprised to hear of Lois's disappearance, Al doesn't like the news any more than her own family. but isn't able to fill in any of the holes. The uncertainty leads investigators to their next stop.
The police quickly locate Marianne and question her about Lois.
But she denies knowing anything about her disappearance.
She advised us that her and Lois were in fact good friends.
When's the last time you saw her?
But she hadn't seen her or spoke to her in a while. And that actually threw us off the path at that point.
When someone is really good at deception, really good at lying, it's a sure sign that this person is a master manipulator who knows how to convince people that what they're seeing is not really what they're seeing.
Marianne's convincing performance may have bought her some time, but she's not completely in the clear.
You have to keep everything open when you really have no idea who your suspects are. You rule anybody out until you positively can.
But Lois's grave won't remain hidden for long, as Marianne does her best to keep her man and get away with murder.
The stakes for Marianne are high.
She loved Al. She wanted him back in the family.
Before Evelyn Jackson agreed to help Marianne with her plan to scare Lois, she convinces her friend that their target is dangerous.
Marianne said that Lois showed up at her house with a couple of other girls in her crew and started to throw glass bottles at her back door, which is just not the kind of girl that Lois was.
Calumet, Illinois faces the dead of winter, while Marianne Arnold tries to get away with murdering her man's potential other lover.
Marianne continues her life day to day as if nothing happened, continuing to raise her kids, continuing to do the things that she normally does.
2 days after leaving Lois for dead, their secret begins banging down the door when investigators get a lead.
We finally got a break in the case when we received an anonymous tip from an informant.
This is a small place, people talk, everybody knows everybody, and so eventually it kind of gets around that Marianne, Catherine, and Evelyn are kind of talking about having something to do with Lois's disappearance.
The alarming information leads law enforcement to bring all 3 ladies into the sheriff's department to interrogate them separately. 16-year-old Catherine Amos isn't prepared to lie about what she knows.
And she basically broke everything down to us and gave us the whole story.
He strangled her.
With multiple offenders, when one person confesses, it's usually a domino effect, and the others confess behind her.
Once Catherine tells the story and names Evelyn and Marianne as a part of the plot to kidnap Lois,
They beat her.
Evelyn also confesses.
But it went too far.
No!
We ended up killing her.
We gotta move her. Come on.
Then Marianne broke down.
She was trying to take him from me. We didn't want to hurt her.
The ringleader and her friends are all charged with first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. Immediately, a search team is dispatched to the last place Lois was seen.
Catherine actually led us down to the river and pointed out where we could look and possibly find Lois's body.
It takes 9 days, but the massive community efforts pay off when Lois's body is found on New Year's Eve.
And miraculously, her body was still preserved because the water was just so cold that it almost just looked like she was sleeping.
It was a very difficult day. The family was out at the river. We wanted to give them some closure.
After a 2-year dose behind bars, Marianne Arnold, Evelyn Jackson, and Catherine Amos plead guilty. Facing the death penalty, the woman who started it all takes the opportunity to speak her mind.
At sentencing, Marianne stood up and faced Lois's mother and said that she was sorry, she never meant for any of this to happen, and that she wished that she could forgive her.
Marianne Arnold Arnold is sentenced to 80 years in prison on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 15 years in prison for aggravated kidnapping, with no possibility of parole. Evelyn Jackson is sentenced to 45 years for first-degree murder and 30 years for aggravated kidnapping. Catherine Amos is sentenced to 20 years for first-degree murder and 15 years for aggravated kidnapping. Though justice is served in court, nothing can bring Lois Thomas back to her loved ones.
My heart went out to the family. This is a tragic case, as we have a family who doesn't have their mother because she's in prison, and a mother that doesn't have her daughter because she's dead.
It's a lonely road ahead for the woman who moves on with life behind bars, without her kids and without her man.
It's unfortunate that Marianne killed someone for her boyfriend who doesn't even love her anymore.
When a person engages in a highly charged emotional situation, and then later on, they calm down and come to terms over what they've done, well, that can actually send them into not just guilt, but emotional shock.